Hi, today I am giving my review of a book I recently finished reading, Strange Times, The Ghost and the Girl by Tom DeLonge and Geoff Herbach. This is the fifth book of Tom DeLonge's that I've read, and the first by Geoff Herbach. This is a sort of middle grade, sort of young adult. I'll get more into the age range and category later. I would consider this science fiction. I don't know if it would be considered horror, but there definitely are paranormal aspects to it. Like, it very much involves ghosts and ghost possession and things of that nature. So it's kind of like science fiction, sort of adventurous, that sort of thing. The main characters are 8th graders. The language is very much mature, so if that's what you base your age range on for a book, then yeah, it would be considered more young adult. I think it's kind of in the middle there. I'll just call it young adult and put it in my young adult playlist. I know when it comes to Tom DeLonge's books that Time Raider is the newest, and I will be talking about this eventually. I've even had a couple people tell me that they're excited for my review of it, so thank you. I'm glad that people are looking forward to it. I mean, even if they weren't, I'd do it anyway. I pretty much just read and review the books that I want to read. But I started reading Strange Times shortly before this book came out, and I'm reading some other books as well, and I didn't want to be reading too many books at once. But I am absolutely excited to get to this. I've got one other novel. I think when I'm finished reading that, I will definitely read this, and I will finish it before the end of the year. I don't know if my review of it will be up before the end of the year. If not, it should be early January, but I don't have a strict timeline for it. But first, I had read one of his older books, Strange Times. This is from 2016. I got this in July and read it a little bit later, and so I'm going to tell you about it. I'll also later on in this video talk about the other books of his I've read and compare them to this, like which I think are the best, which of the co-authors I like most. So I got this book from the To the Stars website, the publisher, and I got it in this box, which is kind of unique because it's not a box set because it's just one book. I know there's a hardcover of this book that exists somewhere, and well, this is a hardcover, I'll show you it, but I mean like a hardcover with a dust jacket, but this is just what they had on the website. It may not have been available on Amazon, it may not have been in stock, but this is just how they're selling it currently, or at least when I got it. And so it comes with the book. Not with a dust jacket, but it is a hardcover. I do think it looks pretty nice. The colors are nice, and it's got this nice pattern on it, which you may not be able to see very well, but I think it shows up. It's got some really cool end pages as well with like aliens, Bigfoot, UFOs. The box came with a couple other things as well. Came with this poster of the cover, which as you can see I haven't put up anywhere yet, but I plan on it. And it's got this Strange Times sticker. And all of that was for just $9, which I feel isn't bad, especially for a hardcover book. I mean, the book's been out for a little while, but yeah, that's how they had it on the website. So that is what I ended up getting. So now I'll tell you more of what this book is about and how much I enjoyed it, what I liked and disliked about it. I wouldn't really say this is any sort of special edition. The contents of the book seem the same. There's not anything exclusive. It's just the poster and the sticker in case you're curious. So as I said, this book's main characters are 8th graders. This book is told in first person from just one character, and that is a boy named Charlie. So Charlie has had some things going on in his personal family life. His dad was in the US Air Force, and he would frequently go on missions, and there was one mission he went on and never came back from. And after this happens, Charlie becomes really antisocial and depressed and doesn't feel like talking to anyone. And at school, he has to find people to work with for a group project in his science class. So he teams up with 4 boys who are our side characters that we follow. They are called Wiz, Riley, Mouse, and Matheson. And they're kind of like Charlie in the sense that they don't really fit in with any other group either. They're kind of weird, but they're kind of like him. And so they team up to work on the science project together, which of course leads to them talking and hanging out outside of school as well. Charlie can't tell his friends what's going on with his dad. He just has to lie and pretend that everything's fine and say that he's just busy at work, so they don't know what's going on with him. During their time of working on their science project together, they have some paranormal encounters. Now, some of the boys believe in that stuff more than others. Charlie, of course, knows from his father's work that that stuff is real, but the other boys do not. It depends on which one. Each of them has their own backstory, and the book goes into that. Now, I thought the way the story was told was pretty interesting, and I'll get into that pretty soon. But yeah, like I said, this book involves ghosts, spirits, things like that. The book is called Strange Times because the group of boys ends up calling themselves the Strange Times Crew, gang, where they go out and investigate weird things, such as ghosts. There are encounters they have with different ghosts in this book, and there are certain people who they're not sure if they should trust, who are like asking for certain things or telling them to do certain things or telling them not to do certain things. and they're trying to figure out like why they seem interested in Charlie specifically, or the other boys. So while they're supposed to be working on their project for school, this pretty much ends up taking up all their focus and time because it's pretty wild and life-threatening as well. So yeah, this book has a mystery aspect to it too, which I found interesting. I was invested in the boys trying to learn and figure out like how certain people, places, and events in their families in the past are connected to them now with all the ghosts and everything going on. Around the time of the novel's release, Geoff Herbach said in an Instagram post that the book is a little X-Files slash Goonies slash Hardy Boys slash E.T., so I guess it's a bit similar to those. I am not very familiar with X-Files, but I have heard Secret Machines being compared to that as well. I think this book is very much based on Tom DeLonge's own teenage years, so if you're already a fan of him, you might enjoy that aspect of it. I know I did. Like, for example, the characters live in San Diego and they ride skateboards and bikes, things like that. Although it does take place in modern times, but it doesn't really feel glaringly modern. I mean, like, they have cell phones, but they pretty much just use them, like, for their flashlights when they're in dark places, things like that. So it's not, like, overwhelmingly modern. So I found the voice of Charlie's narration pretty entertaining and kind of different from other books I've read because he's basically telling the story that's already happened to the reader, often calling the reader pals. So we, the readers, are his pals, and he's telling the story to us after it has happened. I think it's nice when the protagonist of a book has a distinct voice, and I definitely felt that here. I felt that he had quite a distinct personality. I do feel like the characters in the book overall is very juvenile and very accurate to that age. It definitely feels like how teenage boys act and talk. There's a lot of profanity in this book, which may bother some people, so if that's a preference you have, I'm letting you know that now. But I think that that's just pretty accurate. But if you would consider this middle grade because the characters are in 8th grade, the language is not that of a typical middle grade novel. Usually when I read middle grade, it has little to no swearing. So there's definitely a lot of that here, some dirty jokes. Characters are pretty vulgar, a bit judgmental, but they're not really jerks. You know, they talk about girls sometimes. Pretty typical and realistic, I would say. I think it's definitely got a bit of edginess to it as well. Some teenagers may like that, or older people as well. I mean, I often like things with teenage angst, even though I'm no longer a teenager. Besides the paranormal aspects, like the actual ghosts themselves, some other science involved in this is sometimes the boys will work with certain machines or build contraptions to help them with the ghosts, like to detect them or to capture them or destroy them. As I said, the characters felt like teenage boys. They felt like real people to me. I think the dialogue was realistic. Besides Charlie and his group of friends, there aren't a whole lot of other characters in this book. There are a few others that are involved in the plot, but besides that, it is mostly just them. And so there's a bit of a focus on friendship. I think that they go through some things together, and I wouldn't say that this book is primarily about friendship. Like, I don't know if I'd call that one of the themes in this, but maybe slightly. I don't know if this would primarily be considered a horror novel, but there were some scary things in this. I think it does get a bit dark and a bit disturbing, but it wasn't like filled with that all the time, but there were some scary things in it, in my opinion. I kind of liked the writing style in this book and kind of didn't. I liked Charlie's narration style. I thought that that was cool and unique and really gave him character and personality. But there were some other things about the writing in this that I didn't like as much, and I don't think it was the best written. Like, the story itself isn't unoriginal, and it wasn't bland, so I liked that about it. But I think the writing lacked a little bit. I mean, it's properly formatted, you can see, but I have a few examples to show you. So there was this one instance, which I guess is just part of Geoff Herbach's writing style, and that's fine, but I found it hard to follow along with sometimes. Now, sometimes if it's hard for me to follow along with a book, that can be just my own problem, depends on the reader. But there were some instances of some things in this book that made it kind of hard to follow along with, and I will say this book, once I got about halfway through, I was invested, but not terribly, and it was sometimes hard to get myself to pick it back up, and then when I did, I had some trouble focusing on it, and I thought maybe it was just me, but then I would go and read another book and find that easier to follow along with. So maybe this book just wasn't the easiest to follow along with. But also, this genre just isn't my favorite. There's some action in this, which is fun and exciting for some people, but it's just not my favorite. And sometimes when it comes to science stuff, I'm not as interested. I don't know, I find some science interesting. I'm interested in, like, psychology, for example, but, you know, all the science when it came to all the things about, like, the contraptions, for example, that they made to capture the ghosts, that wasn't as interesting to me, but it's part of the story, like, it's to be expected. I'm just saying my personal preferences because that can determine how much I enjoy a book. I did find the writing style in this book unique and different, but it also wasn't the best written book I've ever read, and I will read you some examples of what I was talking about earlier, of this one particular thing that is done a lot that I don't know if it's like improper writing, maybe it's not, but I found it a bit, I don't know if jarring is the word, but I can already have a lot of trouble focusing on what I'm reading, and so with this, it just made it a little harder, but that's just me. Like, I'm just talking about my own experiences here, but I mean, if you've read this too, you can let me know. I don't have any specific pages written down, but I'm sure if I flip through, it won't take me long to find an instance of this, and I don't even know if I would say it's bad. I guess just a preference I had that I didn't like about the writing. Okay, so it actually did take me a little while to find an instance of this, and this definitely isn't how actions are always written, but there was quite a bit of, for example, I pulled open the drawer, comma, cool air poured out. So basically something, comma, and then like not a full sentence, and then the next thing that happened. Skipping through this, I can definitely see that the writing was not very bad at all, but that was just one example. There were also definitely a lot of typos and errors, which I think most books you can find some in. And for the most part, this book was fine, but there were quite a few in this, which normally I don't mind too much. But I think that this book had maybe just a few too many. But I'm not going to be too picky about it. It's mostly good. But you know, sometimes it can be a little jarring when there are a lot, and sometimes it may take a little while to figure out what the book was supposed to say. But those are kind of small complaints. I'm just trying to be honest, and I am giving this 3 stars, which is partially just my own preference when it comes to the kind of books I read, but I also wanted to say the little things that kind of add up. Now, if I really like the book, then those little things may be overlooked more, but those things were part of why I'm rating this just 3 stars, which isn't bad for me, but it's not great either. And this book isn't very long. It's less than 300 pages. As I said, I was invested in this, but not terribly. I did care about the characters and what happened, and I was kind of curious, but also just eventually kind of looking forward to it being over. I mean, I enjoyed my time with it, but I didn't really absolutely love the book, and that could just be the story. Like, the story was fine. I just didn't absolutely love it. A lot of times I read a book and I like it overall, and I can say a lot of things I liked about it, but I just didn't love it. As much as I love Tom DeLonge, I always want to be honest in my reviews of his books, so I'm trying to say both the good and the bad. I think that maybe young boys would like this more, like young teenage boys. Of course, people who aren't in that demographic can enjoy it as well, but I think that this book might particularly be good for boys of that age. When I was looking through Geoff Herbach's Instagram page, I saw him even posting about something like, I don't remember what it was exactly, but something encouraging young boys to read more, which I think is great, and so books like these may be good for them. They may like it, they may find certain aspects of it relatable. Like I said, I definitely felt that the dialogue was realistic, and the thought process probably was too. I don't know, because I've never been a teenage boy. I think that group may like this kind of book more. I did like getting to know the characters and getting to know some things about their backstories and families. I wouldn't say the characters were absolutely lovable, but I wouldn't say they were flat either, but they were decent. They didn't all feel exactly the same with their personalities, but they felt kind of similar. Like, if I tried to tell you which one had a certain backstory, I think I would remember them pretty well, but it could sort of blend together for some people, I would imagine. I think that young teenage boys are also more likely to enjoy the humor in this more, although I did find some of it funny, and I did enjoy some of the humor. I thought this book was bizarre, funny, weird, and, well, strange. I think that it has a good, fitting title. Another cool thing about the way the story is told is because it's about a story that's already happened and Charlie's telling us about it in the future, there are certain times where the characters split up and you get to know what they were doing, because basically, like, since then they've met back up and told the other people what was going on their side. So you get to hear about what the other characters were doing even when they were separated during the time of the narrative, but it's still all told from Charlie's perspective. He's just saying, I guess, what they told him later on was going on with them. I thought this book was okay. I'm glad to be done with it, but I'm still glad I read it and tried it out. I think that it may be more for some people than me. I think they may enjoy it more than I will. It depends on the person. It was also nice to read another ghost story. I haven't read very many of those. I do want to read Riley's Ghost by John David Anderson. He's definitely one of my favorite authors. And I have read Cold Bath Street by A.J. Hartley. Riley's Ghost by John David Anderson is middle grade. This is young adult. And then there's also the sequel, Written Stone Lane, but I haven't read that one yet. I hope to get to it eventually. I'm sure I will. From what I've read so far, I think I like ghost stories. I especially think it's interesting because ghosts can be around for a long time, and so they could be connected to something that happened a long time ago, and then that can somehow connect with whatever is going on in the present. In the ghost stories I have read so far, I have enjoyed that aspect of it, so I just know, like, certain people are more into a certain thing than others. Like, Maybe some people really like vampire stories, for example. So for me with ghosts, I think so far I've enjoyed it. It's alright. I think in these books it was done well. So I enjoyed and laughed at some of this book, but it did take me a while to finish, but that's also just me. Sometimes it can take me quite a while to finish a book. I don't feel inclined to read anything else that Geoff Herbach has written. I did look up more about his other books, and I do still follow him on Instagram, and I'll continue to do so, but yeah, I didn't, read this and think I need to read everything else by him. Plus, this was co-authored, so, his other books might not really have this vibe anyway. Of all of Tom DeLonge's books I have read so far, like I said, this was the 5th one. I think this was definitely near the bottom. It definitely was not the best. I'll show you the others I've read so far, and I do plan on reading all of them. So I've read the Secret Machines novels with A.J. Hartley, both of these, and I thought these were both pretty good. I gave both of these 5 stars. As you can see, I have some of A.J. Hartley's books that aren't involved with Tom DeLonge at all. I checked him out on his own, and with him, I really like him. He's become one of my favorite authors, and I want to read a lot more of his other work. And then there's also the 2 standalone from last year, Trinity. This has been my favorite of Tom DeLonge's books so far, and subsequently also A.J. Hartley's. This I thought was really good, and I have reviews on my channel of all of his books that I've read so far. So yeah, this would definitely be at the top. And I have read the first Poe Anderson novel. This one I also gave 3 stars. I think ultimately though I did like this one more than Strange Times. Especially the things that I liked about this, I really liked about it, and then it kind of, I feel, went sort of downhill when it comes to my personal tastes about halfway through. Other people might enjoy it more though. I know this is definitely one of the more popular books of his. But yeah, I definitely think the ones written with A.J. Hartley have been the best ones in my experience so far. I have not yet read the sequel to Poe Anderson. I plan on getting to it, but I'm honestly not desperate to read it. There are so many other books I want to read first. After my experience with this one, I don't feel super eager to read the next one. I mean, I still want to. I'm still invested, especially because this kind of did end on sort of a cliffhanger, but I'm just saying, based on my experience with this, I'm not looking forward to it to the point where I'd have to read it right away. I don't really feel that way, but I'll read it eventually, and the sequel is a little bit shorter, so if I don't like it, then at least it won't last as long. I mean, not that this book is extremely long. It was a decent length. So yeah, for me, Strange Times was near the bottom when it comes to my personal opinions and tastes, but I've yet to rate any of his books lower than 3 stars, so that's good. I know there is also a comic in the Strange Times universe called The Curse of Superstition Mountain, and I didn't know about that up until recently. I know it came out, I think, a year before the novel did, but the To the Stars website doesn't sell it. It might be hard to find. I'm pretty sure it's not in print anymore. I don't know if I'll ever come across that. It's on my TBR. I would like to read it at some point, but I don't know if I'll ever be able to find it, but I'm just saying I know that that exists. So yeah, I gave this 3 stars. If you've read this book, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. I'd love to discuss it with you in the comments. And thank you for watching.